That's
This,
so
this
awesome.
can't be that difficult. I have to figure this out. And I did. I figured out how to do it. I figured out what it was about. And finally, I made it past the biggest hurdle.
What's up, everybody? This is Dallin Candland. We are back with you today, and I'm joined by the one and only Dennis Morrow, and he wrote the Lines of the Quad series for children's fantasy books, well, youth fantasy books, and he's done a lot of other really good things in his life. I'm excited to dive into his career with him, some of his mindsets, and things that have got him to where he is now. Thank you for joining us, Dennis.
I appreciate it. And I'm a little nervous because this is the first video blog I've ever done, but we'll do fine, I'm sure.
Yeah, Dennis and I have talked a little bit about this recording. He really wanted to get it good. We did one already, but we wanted to do another one just so we could get him on the best, get him in the best light, I guess. And I think it's really paid off. You can see his background with his books right there. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, so I'd like to introduce myself as I'm an author. I've written 5 books. They're all about a series about 4 teenagers. We'll get into the books a little later. But the idea of writing was not something I grew up with. I never thought I would be a writer. My early days, I was raised by a single mom, and so we didn't have a lot back then. She kind of instilled in me the idea of positive thinking and the idea that you can pretty much accomplish whatever you want if you work hard at it. So in high school, when I was in high school, I didn't do very well. My mom was working. I was pretty much on my own. Study habits were non-existent. Matter of fact, back then when we graduated, they had a chart on the wall outside the principal's office that told you where you were in the class. So if you were the top of the class in grades, you were at the top of the list. If you were the bottom of the class in grades, you were at the bottom of the list. Now, they don't do that these days. But back then they did, and they had 2 red lines on the chart. So the top third, middle third, bottom third. I was proud to be the top person in the bottom third of the class. So I didn't do very well in high school. Just kind of blew it off. Later on, I got serious about school, and I went back to school a few years later after I graduated from high school. Seriously, got an engineering degree, graduated top of the class of my engineering class. Later, I ended up going for my master's in business, and so I have an undergraduate degree in mechanical engineering, mechanical aerospace, and then a business degree in marketing and sales. So my career took off after I got my engineering degree. I went into some engineering jobs originally, and then went over to what the engineers would call the dark side, which was I went into sales. So I took from then on, I was in technical sales the rest of my career. I ended my career. The last 4 or 5 jobs I had were at top management jobs at high-tech companies. Finishing a job at NASA at the Kennedy Space Center was my final job. The day they signed off on that job and was complete was a Friday. I retired that day, and the very next day was my 73rd birthday. So that was a good birthday present. I finally retired. But to get back to where I became, why did I become an author? I think that for me, it's an interesting story because I'm an engineer. I was never very good at writing in school. I was better at numbers. That's why I ended up going in the engineering path. But I'd like to talk a little bit about my son, Stephen. My son, Stephen, is in the movie business. He's a sound mixer for movies. Uh, when he was in high school, in his junior year in high school, his sister asked him to take a Christmas present and put it in his trunk of his car and keep it there till Christmas. Turns out that that was a rifle. It was Christmas wrap in a box, but it was a rifle. And the word got out that he had a rifle in his trunk, and the school found out, and he was not allowed to come back to school anymore. And the state of Washington State, where he was going to school, where he was living, had a statewide law that said he wouldn't be able to go to any school. He's out. There was no going back. And his mother and I were divorced at the time, and he was in Washington, in Seattle, and I was in Buffalo, New York. He called me on the phone, and he was in tears, and he thought his life was pretty much over because he wasn't going to be able to go to college, he wouldn't be able to finish high school. He was just beside himself.
And what time was this? Like, was this junior, senior?
It was middle of his junior year. It was at Christmas time, his junior year. So he would have missed half his junior year and all of his senior year. So my advice to him at the time was, don't let it. You can have it destroy the rest of your life if that's the burden you want to carry, or you can turn this into something better. And he was confused about how he could do anything to make it better. So I advised him to tomorrow, the very next day, not a week from tomorrow, not next month, but tomorrow, go to the nearest junior college and sign up for classes. And of course, his immediate reaction was, they won't let me in. I haven't graduated from high school. I said, no, junior colleges will let anybody in that wants to learn. You go there, figure out what you want to learn about, and just take classes. Fun, whatever it is you want to do. Take something, but stay in school until you're 18 and decide what you want to do with your life. So he did. Took my advice, went to the nearest junior college and started taking classes about movie making, about lighting, sound, cabling, all the things about how to make a movie. And he did that for a year and a half. And he also volunteered on production companies that were in the Seattle area for free. He went on a production company and said, I'll pull cable, I'll set up lights, whatever you want me to do, I'll do it for free. I just want to learn how to do it. And he did that until he was 18. When he was 18, he threw all of his belongings in the trunk of his car, drove to Hollywood, ate out of a soup can for several years while he tried to figure out how to make a career. Eventually joined the union, eventually became a sound mixer. It's a success story that can't be beat. He has been nominated for 3 Oscars for sound mixing. The first one was La La Land about 4 years ago. The second one was 2 years ago for A Star Is Born. And the last one was this year for Ford versus Ferrari. So here you have a guy who could have had his life destroyed, decided that he was going to do something with it, had a goal in mind, worked hard. I'm telling you, he worked hard to find out how to do this. He's now a successful businessman. He has his own business, and he's on movies all the time, doing movies, and he knows a whole lot of the movie stars that he deals with, because when he goes on set, he puts the microphones on the actors. He gets to know them. So anyway, he's a very good success story. Along the way, he had written some screenplays to me and sent them to me back in 2003. And I read the screenplays. I really liked the format of the screenplays, but I didn't like the subject matter. So I decided to write a fun-loving kind of screenplay back to him, just for fun. I started to write it, and then I realized I don't know what I'm doing. So I ended up buying the right software for screenplays. And then I went to Barnes & Noble. I bought a half dozen books on how to write screenplays. studied them like I was in school, and then I went back to the screenplay and I wrote a screenplay. It took several years because I was working full-time. Full-time job for me, the kind of job I was in was 60 hours a week, traveling a lot, actually around the world. It was a lot of traveling. Anyway, I got a lot of writing done while I was traveling, so it was good. I sent the screenplay back to him, and he really liked it, and he talked me into going to a screenwriters convention. I went to the screenwriters convention and presented my screenplay to 15 production companies. 10 of the production companies pretty much said the same thing. 5 of them didn't. It wasn't something they would be interested in. 10 of them said they would be interested. They thought it was a good story. They thought it was unique. It would be fun to make. The problem was it would be a $150 million movie with all the special effects. And therefore, I would have to have an audience standing at the door before they would commit to that kind of money. So I need to go write the book. Well, I was a little discouraged because I'm an engineer, not a writer. The whole reason I went to engineering is because I like numbers, not writing. So I was a little discouraged by it. But then after a month or so, I thought, you know what? I didn't know how to write a screenplay either, so I'll try it. If I get to 50 pages, I'll be lucky. I mean, when I was in school, I couldn't write 2 pages of anything. So I thought if I get to 50 pages, I'll be exciting. So I went back to Barnes and Noble, bought some books on how to write books, how to do scenes, how to do, how do you create stress in a story, those kinds of things. Read the book, underlined them, studied them, wrote the book. The book turned out to be 120,000 words.
Wow.
I eventually found an editor. The editor said, "You have way too big a book for your first book. No one will ever buy into that book because they'll think it's all words. You need to cut about 50,000 words out of the book. You need to get it down to 65,000 words." It was very difficult for me to cut things out that I loved that I wrote. But I ended up getting down, this is book 1.
Wow.
And I ended up
So
at
good.
85,000 words. So book 1 turned out to be 85,000 words. Turns out I was not a very good writer at the time. My editor told me so. Said, "Look, I can rewrite your book for you, and I can make it a pretty good book. Or I can tutor you. You can become a better writer because you're going to have more books, and therefore you'll be a better writer." So we did, and it took me about a year of rewriting the whole book several times, learning what I was doing wrong, learning about scenes and about how to do things correctly. The storyline was great, but just little nuances that make it a better book. So I ended up publishing the first book in 2013. By the time I finished book 1, I realized it's not a single book. This story is not one book. This story is a 5-book series. And so I began writing book 2. I ended up with book 2 a couple years later. This is book 2. It's 105,000 words. Book 3 is 105,000 words. Book 4 is 103,000 words, I think. And then the last book, book 5, was published last year in August 2019. Again, it's over 100,000 words.
Wow.
So the journey took a lot of years and a lot of dedication to complete the work. Once I started writing book 2, and I realized that it's a 5-year system, I knew I had to finish. Because if I hadn't finished book 5, if I didn't get to the end of book 5, then the whole series no one would want to read it. Why would they want to read a story that's not finished? So it was a real challenge, particularly at my age, to continue to write and to do this job. I ended up now have this. I have the book. I have all 5 books in a box set.
Dang,
So
that's cool.
now, when I go to book signings at bookstores, um, most people will buy book 1. Nobody buys book 2, 3, 4 by itself. They always buy book 1. But many people will now buy a box set, and they buy all 5 books at once. So this is a great sales tool. On the back, on the bottom of the box, I have like a cereal, like a
Cereal box. Yeah, I can see it a little bit.
It says facts, box set facts, and it tells you that there's 513,000 words.
Can you try to show it again real fast?
Huh?
Can you try to show it to us again real fast? Ooh, let's see if I can pin you. There we go. Nice. We got, wow. That's super interesting.
It has the number of words, it has the number of pages, it has the main characters. So it's fun, and people really like to see that. So I now am in the process of selling books. I don't have any retailers picking it up and putting it in their bookstores like Barnes and Noble and people like that. I tried to get book 1 into Barnes and Noble when I first started, and they said that they can't put a book in their bookstore that's not selling already. So I have to get a history of selling before they would put it in the bookstore. Well, I now have over 1,100 books in circulation.
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty, that's awesome.
And when I go to a book signing, I normally go to small bookstores because the big ones, like Barnes and Noble, won't let an author in unless your book's in the store. So it's difficult to get in. But the little bookstores love me because I go into a small bookstore and I'll do, in 2 days, I'll do retail about $1,000 in retail for them. And then they take their cut and give me a piece of it. So it's good for them, it's good for me. I do maybe 2, maybe 3 a month. Now that the virus is here, I'm not doing any. But as soon as I can get out and start doing them again, I'll be doing book signings about 2 a month. And depending on the month, maybe 3, maybe only 1, depending on holidays and things like that. But I'm really excited. It's been a long journey, but it's been very, very rewarding. If you look at my whole life has been about me being a positive thinker. I didn't do very well in school early age, but I did really well once I got my mind on it. I think a lot of people need to know that even though maybe you didn't do well at some point in your life, something was wrong, you can turn that around. You can make a decision and turn it around. I always say to people that have issues or trying to do something, for instance, they may say, I need to lose weight, or I need to exercise more, or I need to do this or that, or I need to be a better person, I need to be a better father, or whatever. My answer to that is, you need to make a decision. It's simple. You make a decision, you decide. It's not a hope or a dream, it's a decision. This is a decision I'm gonna make. When I wrote this book, I made a decision that I was gonna write a book all the way to the end. I've never written a book before. It's a decision you make, and then you follow up on it. Also, people say, well, you're really lucky. You sold 1,100. You have 1,100 books in circulation. Then you're good. And I say luck is when opportunity and preparation come together. So if you prepare yourself for something, so you want to You want to write a book? You go to Barnes and Noble and buy a bunch of books on how to write books. You figure out the best way to do it, and then you go to work on it. Eventually, someone comes by and says, I want to buy one of those books, and you start selling your books, and people say, gee, you're really lucky. Well, you know what? I'm only lucky because I prepared myself. Had I not prepared myself, I wouldn't sell any of these books. So if you're not prepared, you don't see the opportunity come. Opportunities come all the time to people, and they go right by them because they're not prepared to see them.
Mm-hmm.
So my advice to people who want to try something, want to do something new, something that they can be proud of, then they need to prepare themselves, get ready, so that when the opportunity comes along, they can jump on that opportunity and make it actually happen for them. So I put my books up. I take these posters to my book signings, and the people that come in the bookstore really like these posters. But this is the cover of book 5. I want to tell you a little story about the books themselves. So it's about 4 teenagers. These 4 teenagers have no clue what's around the corner. They don't know that their fathers have been training them since they were little. By training, I mean they took them on camping trips, and they didn't just camp out and fish, but the fathers began giving them a map, a compass, a goal, and the 4 teenagers, just 3 boys and a girl, would go off into the woods on Saturday morning to find this goal, whatever it is. They had to fend for themselves. They had to find their own food. They had to build their own fires. They had to camp out in the middle of the night on Saturday night. They come back on Sunday with solve the puzzle. They've been doing that for years, 2 or 3 times every summer for years. So they've been training and not knowing that they've been training. So these 4 teenagers who don't know what's coming, their fathers are wizards. And the fathers have been in an alliance of the quad, alliance of the 4 fathers. These 4 fathers keep the underworld in the underworld. So as the book opens up, book 1, they are in a battle in the underworld. And the underworld, one of the generals in the underworld that's against them finds a magic wand that can now kill the alliance. They've been, oh, by the way, this alliance is 1,200 years old. So it started back in the year 800, 850, I think it was. And every 20 years, the responsibility and the magic that goes along with the responsibility transfers to the next generation. So this battle that the fathers were in, they were hoping that they were going to finally have the last battle with the evil queen and lock her away forever. But this magic wand comes out that can now kill the alliance, so the alliance has to retreat. They come back into our world, and they've got a problem, because this Saturday night is the end of the 20-year period. They have to transfer all the powers and the responsibility for the underworld to these 4 youths. And it always happens, every one of the transfers happens when the youth are 15 years old and at the end of 20 years. So the fathers know they have to do it, but they're really afraid for their kids because they know that the queen has found this magic wand. Anyway, the kids go off in book 1, the kids go off on the journey, and I won't tell you all the story, but what happens is they have to be trained. So in order to train, they get sent to the 13th century, time travel to the 13th century, where they're kind of equal in power to the evil queen. And they can now face her, and they can still be killed, but they have a chance.
Yeah.
So they go there, they start learning about their powers in the 13th century. They face the evil queen, and then the fathers the forefathers have taken, there's a symbol they wear around their neck. It gives them more power. It takes the power that they already have and enhances their power. They took those 4 symbols and they sent them back in time and space. And so the first symbol went to the 13th century, where they learned about some of their powers. Then the second symbol went to the 15th century in book 2, where they face the evil queen and learn more about their powers. And this is all in the underworld. So this is, book 1 is like in England, old England, castles, things like that. This is all in the underworld. So they learn all about the underworld and evil queen. And they face her in the 15th century. In the 17th century, they go to an island in the South Indian Ocean, where they learn more about their powers. They have to face the evil queen again. And the new characters are always coming into the picture. In the 19th century, in book 4, they go to Central Africa, where they learn more about their powers, and they pick up each book. They have to find that symbol. They find the 4th symbol, and so now they're ready to come back into real time. And in book 5, they come back only a millisecond after they left. So that Saturday night when they left, the evil queen was attacking as they left. And then they're gone for 8 or 9 months their time. But when they come back a millisecond after they left. So the evil queen's coming in, they leave, they come back a millisecond later, all trained, ready to go, and then they face her in book 5. And in book 5, if you see, if you look close, so it starts out in the 13th century with bows and arrows and swords, but by the time you get to the 21st century, the evil queen has also advanced. And so she has modern warfare equipment as well. So that's pretty much the story. And people seem to like it. It's on Amazon. You buy the books, individual books on Amazon. They have great reviews. Of all the reviews, I only have 2 reviews that are 4-star. The rest are all 5-star reviews. Turns out you can buy the box set from me. You can't buy them on Amazon. So if someone wanted to buy all 5 books at the same time and get a box set, they can buy it from me.
How much is the box set?
The box set, if I was in a bookstore, this is a $90 box set.
Oh, wow.
$18 a book times 5. However, I sell it for $76. I give 10% off. And if someone buys it directly from me and I'm not in a bookstore, I sell it for $60.
Oh, well, yeah, that's reasonable, honestly. Very reasonable.
Yeah. So that's $15 a book instead of 18. So, and then the way you buy that is you get a hold of me direct. You go on my website, allianceofthequad.com, and it'll say how to buy books. It'll say go to Amazon. The easy way is to go to Amazon. More difficult way is to buy them from me. But when you buy them from me, you get a signature. As if you're at a bookstore, I'll sign them and I'll dedicate them to you, so that you get them just as if you were at a bookstore when you buy them directly from me. And I ship them. So that's the story. And
It's
I'm
awesome.
excited. I'm excited to be here with you today. And this is an opportunity that's fun. I've never done anything like this before.
Yeah, I really want to get you on. Like, since I started my podcasting journey, I've met a number of other podcasters similar to your story. I'm sure they meet some people along the way that kind of help them and enhance their journey. So I want to get you on as many of those podcasts as possible. So that's kind of what I'd like to do, if you'd be up for that.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'd like to do that.
Yeah.
I need to have my story get out there somehow.
I completely agree. And there's a lot to it that led to you writing this book. And you told a story a little bit ago that I thought was pretty cool about this one guy who's bought like 10 copies of each of your books or something. Do you want to tell that super fast?
Yeah, I'll tell that story. And I got one other one I'll tell. But I have a friend from church when I finished book, I think it was book 3, is what about the time I met him, and he's in his late 80s, and he bought book 1 to read it. He said, "I'll buy your book. Let's see if I like it." So he liked it, and he came back to me, and he bought 9 more books of book 1, gave them to his grandkids.
That's
And then
so
he
cool.
bought book 2. He read that, and so every time a book came out, he bought 10 of each one, and he gave them to his grandkids. So all of his grandkids have full sets of my books.
Wow, that's so cool.
He's my best customer. So in book 3, in book 3, if you look at the back of the book, there's a picture of a guy.
Yeah, I can see it.
That's Hargett. His name is underneath it, Hargett. Hargett is the fellow that was buying all the books. His last name was Hargett. So I actually put a character in book 3.
That's so
Because he was
sick.
buying all my books. I decided to name the character after him in book 3.
Wow.
Now,
He's become part of the story. Huh?
Yeah, the last thing I want to say is the whole story started with the screenplay, the original screenplay. So when I'm all done writing the books, which was last August, I decided I need to rewrite the screenplay, because if I present the screenplay that I wrote back at the beginning, it was written before book 1 was written. So there's a lot in book 1 that's not in the screenplay. So I decided I need to rewrite that screenplay to make sure that some of the elements that were really interesting in the book, make sure they get it into the screenplay. So I have rewritten the whole screenplay, and it's now in review. My son's reviewing it, the one that's in the business. He reads screenplays all the time, so he can tell me what I need to fix. So he's reviewing it right now. Once I get it reviewed and I get it to a point where I like it and it's done, then I'm going to be going to try and sell the book and the screenplay at the same time. See if I can get some traction that way.
Yeah, I mean, like, it'd be so cool to see your story on the big screen. Absolutely. Because there's some people that just don't want to read the book, immediately. So that's cool.
Yeah, and getting a movie made is like winning the lottery. The chances are very slim. So I'm not counting on it. But if you don't prepare and the opportunity comes up, you won't see it and it won't get done. So I'm preparing to see if I can get this into a movie. And if I'm prepared and an opportunity comes, then maybe it'll take off.
Yeah, that would be super cool to see. So, well, what would be some stuff that you would share with some people that may be struggling right now with their college life or even in this quarantine? What would you say to them?
Well, I think we have to recognize that quarantine is temporary. And yes, there's going to be some long-term issues with people who have passed away. That's devastating for families. And there's going to be some businesses that don't come back. They won't return. But we've been through some really bad stuff in our past, and we've always come back out of it. And our country is a very positive country, even though we have differences in political differences and religious differences. We are, when I was a kid, they always called the United States of America the melting pot. And the reason they called it the melting pot is because all these different people, all the different religions, political persuasions, all come together, and we are one country, even though we're a mix. And this mixture creates a gold, a refined gold, that's not found anyplace else in the world. So we will come out of this, and we will come out of it strong. And if you are struggling with something, figure out what it is you're struggling with and get a better attitude about it. Your attitude. Make a decision that you're going to move forward and not backward. And we make decisions all day. We make decisions about lots of things. Am I going to go to the store? Am I going to, whatever I'm going to do. You have to also make decisions on the direction of your life. You can't just let it float by. You have to take a hold of it, make a decision. This is the direction I'm going. When I went back to school, when I finally decided I'm going to go back to school and get an engineering degree, those degrees are not easy to get. And my hardest class, my number one hardest class was chemistry. I actually tried several times to start my career in college. I ran up against chemistry and couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. So when I finally decided, I'm going to do this, I'm going to get an engineering degree, but in order to do that, I have to get past that chemistry. I have to get past chemistry. I put my mind on it that last time. 2 semesters of chemistry in college. I got A's in both semesters. And then I went on to do pretty well, not straight A's, but pretty well in engineering. I became the engineering club president in our school, Cal State Fullerton. And we were the first graduating class at Cal State Fullerton as a university, because it was a school before that. That year, they became a university. We were the first class that graduated from the university. Anyway, you have to make a decision, and you have to move forward. For me to make a decision to go back into engineering, get my engineering degree, that was not a simple decision, because I had already tried a couple times and just miserably failed. I went to BYU, did really bad. I went to Arizona State, did really bad. I went to a couple of junior colleges, just terrible. And then I made a decision. I decided this is not an option. I have to do this. And then I got serious and I did well. And I think that's what people need to do. People who are struggling with whatever the issue is, figure out the direction you want to go and make a decision that sticks, and then move forward.
Yeah, I think that's really good. It's really difficult sometimes because you have so many different balls up in the air, but then you need to kind of choose which ones am I going to let drop and which ones am I going to keep going, because it does take energy, whether you're using it for being negative or whether you're using it for being positive. It's generally the same thing. And I like the quote that says that, well, the general fact, it takes like 37 muscles in your mouth to frown, but like only 17 to smile. So like, why not smile? Smiling's a lot easier.
Yeah, great. I agree with you.
Yeah.
I really appreciate being on this with you. Thank you.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Is there anything else that you'd like to tell our listeners? I'd definitely like you to have you back, maybe after I've finished some of your books.
It'd be great. I'd love to come back.
Yeah. Do you have I don't know, I know you've already gone deep into it, but what are some, what's one other thing, I guess, that's helped you out that I guess has gotten you here? Because you've clearly been able to keep pretty steady and motivated.
Well, I have a very strong faith portion of my life. My ancestors were handcart pioneers coming across the plains. My great-great-great-grandmother went with her family across the plains with a handcart. Her and her husband, and I think she had 6 or 7 children. When they got to Salt Lake, and she lost her husband and 4 of the children. One of the children that were left was my line. So I have a history of great people that endured great challenges. My grandfather, when he was 19 years old, was asked to lead a wagon train from Salt Lake Valley down into Mexico and settle a town in Mexico. That's when the Mormons were moving south to populate. And he settled a town down there. He became the mayor, had a great cattle ranch, was very wealthy. And then Pancho Villa ran all Americans out of Mexico. And he left with his family and one wagon full of possessions. And was pretty poor from then on. Was a blacksmith. My mother was born in Tucson, Arizona, and then he moved to Mesa. He helped build the Mesa Temple, and he was the leader, the priesthood leader that started the first Spanish-speaking temple ordinances. And I grew up with him on the farm in the summers. My mom, like I said, was a single mom. So in the summertime, because we're not in school, my mom sent us over to my grandparents to stay for the summer. And I worked the farm in the summertime in Arizona. It was 120 degrees.
Yeah, that's hot.
But it was a great experience, and I got to know my grandparents well because of it. But yeah, I have a great history in the church, and it's a basis for my strength.
Yeah.
I also have a great wife that supports me, and she's wonderful. And I couldn't have done the books without her support and encouragement. So there's a lot of things that fold into why you do what you do. And I have a lot of positive things that have helped me through the years.
Yeah, you have truly a wonderful legacy before you and behind you. You know, a lot of wonderful people who sacrificed and, you know, who showed that love for you by sacrificing today. So that's definitely a great message for everyone. Like thinking that, you know, you're not just doing this for you, you're doing this for, oh, I just hit the mic. You're doing this for everyone that will go beyond you. So thank you for everything you shared. Dennis's website, Alliance of the Quad, is in the show notes. Definitely hit him up, and I'll be continuing trying to share his story and getting him on more podcasts. So stay tuned for my email list, and I will help you to learn more about Dennis, because there's so much we can go into. So
you can share my email address as well.
Okay.
Because that's the way they can buy books from me, is email me and say, I want to buy your books, book one, or whatever book they want to buy. And that way I can communicate back and forth, and we can get them what they want.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show, Dennis. We will definitely have you again. And I wish you the very best of everything, and good job with what you've been able to do. It's great to talk with you and learn more from you again.
Okay, well, thank you, and you have a good day.
Thanks, Dennis.